Welcome to Three, a part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. Post Wimbledon, where Novak Djokovic has fallen in the final to Carlos Alcaraz, surprisingly 6-2, 6-2, 7-6. Joel, you were there to witness it all, so I want to start with you and a very simple question. We obviously know that a ton went right for Alcaraz, but since this is a show about Djokovic primarily, we're just going to start by really focusing on him. So what went wrong for Novak in the final in your eyes?
He just got tremendously outplayed, and he admitted that. I mean, it's an interconnected game, and Alcaraz, the youth, the speed, the shot making, the variety. Maybe this was the first best test of Novak. I mean, he hadn't had too many tough matches prior. He hadn't played a top 20. I forget what his highest ranked opponent was prior to the final. So I think he just came up against an entirely different level of opponents playing some inspired tennis. That was really the part of it. And there were certain things, for example, one tactical thing Alcaraz did very smart. Whenever Novak came to net, Novak was very good at the net in the semis. He was, I think it was 43 of 56 and 16 of 17 serving and volleying. Alcaraz, he hit the passing shots cross court and not always that fast. And that's a great way to expose someone's volley technique, to really see how, and Novak missed a lot of volleys, didn't he?
The dippers. Yeah.
Yep.
I thought we nailed it in our two podcasts that were related to Wimbledon, saying that, well, particularly in the last one, saying that he was untested. That was your point, Gill. And me saying that when you get to the upper parts of the ATP Tour, the speeds are different. I mean, in even just a little minute change in time being taken away is going to make a big difference. So it was like being in a race car where he hadn't seen those speeds in a while. And even I said that the serve speed wasn't really what I was referring to, but actually Alcaraz served faster than he had been slightly. So even his first serve speeds were up. Everything was going right for him, and Novak looked, rusty. Even though he wasn't rusty per se, he was rusty with that level of talent.
Yeah, Novak said at the press conference, I was in his press conference afterwards, and he said he'd never seen Alcaraz serve better. Was I missing something? So even that, which is a shot that's had a little bit of, potential opening Alcaraz with his serve sometimes, and there he was just serving great too. So Novak was just completely, particularly through the first 2.9 sets, completely outplayed.
I had a viewer point something out in a comment recently, and ever since I've tried to focus in on it, it has come true in the biggest way, which is that sometimes Alcaraz's serve does go off the rails and it starts to either be wild, low percentage, missing spots all the time. Sometimes, especially in the past, he used to have an issue where sometimes he'd hit a first serve and it's like, wait, were you trying to do damage with that serve? It was just a nothing burger, you kicked it in. But when he really feels like he needs to serve well and it's necessary, it tends to rise to that. So, and I think you could say that for the entire match. Like Alcaraz throughout the tournament had these dips and these lapses in focus. Where was the lapse in focus? It wasn't there. And I think that was a result of, I'm playing Novak Djokovic. I need to be at my best. And I thought Alcaraz, he's already shown a propensity to do that in his career so far. I think when he understands he has to be better, he is better. It makes him better.
That's great. I also think that grass is a great serving surface even now in its slow stage. So there's a sense in grass, if you're serving well, you'll feel like you're serving even better. So it'll self-perpetuate itself into it. And he was feeling it, right? You could see it again and again.
Yeah. And Amy, I was going to bring up your comment about the speeds, because watching the match, I guess the best way to put it is Djokovic looked too slow to compete in this match with Alcaraz at this level. Like the movement just didn't look good enough. And I was sitting there like, well, if it doesn't look good enough at all here, why couldn't everyone see that? And I'm not going to say it wasn't a suspicion, because it was throughout the tournament. I was thinking, is he explosive enough? Is the movement good enough? But it wasn't clear. It wasn't crystal clear that Djokovic was too slow until he actually faced Alcaraz and he went toe to toe and the speeds were too much for him. And, the foundation of his game, he's done such a good job with skill development, but he can't, I guess we learned here, he can't get away with, I'm just going to offense my way to a win over Carlos Alcaraz. I'm just going to attack my way. And I don't trust my movement at all. And I'm not going to play long rallies and stay really consistent. I'm just going to go after it and beat a top level player. That was kind of, I thought, the attempt that he made, but you gotta be able to play in all phases of the game. And I don't think his movement, and we'll talk about the knee more specifically, but for now, I'll just put it like this. I don't think his movement allowed him to play consistent baseline tennis. It forced him to overpress the issue offensively.
Well, how could we have known that there was a problem? Holger Rune, done and dusted. Musetti, easy.
Easy.
I think it speaks to the notch above that the top 4 or 5 players in the world are compared to below number 5 in the world, say. It's right now, for whatever reason, we talk about separations. There's a separation there. There's a gap there. And this is my favorite Federer quote. I always say that you can't think about playing the short points. You can't have that in your head. Like, I'm going to try to get this point over quickly. It doesn't work.
Can you believe, can I just interject here?
Yeah.
The longest rally of the match, does anyone know what it was?
13 shots.
It was 13 shots. I mean, how many rallies over 13 shots do we think they played in the 3-setter in Cincinnati? And I mean, I would love to go back and actually look at that. And it's the first time I've had that thought, but 10 at least? Like,
Wasn't there like a 26-shot rally in that match or something? There was a long rally in that match for hardcourt.
Absolutely. But Djokovic felt like he couldn't play ball in that situation. I didn't think he would be able to win like that, but I thought he would be moving well enough at the very least to be willing to test the waters in that respect, especially when he was nervous and he started missing volleys. Like, what would old Djokovic have done there? He would have just gotten really consistent lockdown.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but he's up against, I mean, this is the thing about this competitive cycles of the game, of how each era creates new demands. And we've seen this going back to Grigor and Nishikori and Milos Raonic and all these generations that have attempted to topple the great players and win slams of their own. And those other guys were still playing well enough. And Novak was still playing well enough even last year, except for the Wimbledon final. But now you've got someone who's got a lot of answers to those questions. Much more evolved game and set of tools and speed of foot, speed of ball, variety. It's like basically guys like Alcaraz built their game to problem solve the big 3, and one of them retired, one of them is almost retired, and one of them he wants to help retire.
Big picture. Joel, you said something, I think it was before Roland Garros, that I really liked. We were talking about all of the reasons why Djokovic had struggled throughout the year. The offseason that was way too short, in my opinion, after playing Davis Cup and having the obligations with the launch of his water drop line, and then having an illness and a fever before the Australian Open, and then perhaps that bubbling up again, and then struggling with the motivation in March and maybe early April a little bit. And then in Rome, you feel like, okay, it's time to really lock in. And then the water bottle happens. And then at Roland Garros, the knee happens. And it's like, wow, okay, this has been a tough year. But Joel, you said the more outliers there are, the more they start to look like inliers. And with the knee thing, I am 100% willing to look at that as the reason why Djokovic's movement was subpar. But I'm also not going to brush off the fact that Djokovic hasn't had a top, like he's played Sinner and Alcaraz twice now, and that's the level you need to be at in order to win slams. And he's lost in straight sets both times. I'm not willing to completely throw that out, brush it off, write it off. I think you have to fall somewhere in between, Amy, where it's like, okay, I understand the context, but I also understand that now we're dealing with like what, a 6-month sample size. So it's not like it doesn't matter and it's meaningless. And because the knee thing happened, we just shouldn't care about this result.
Right. You're trying to get me to say that, and not you, I'm saying that rhetorically, that he's getting older and we're seeing a diminishment in skill. I mean, I don't watch this. I really don't care. I'm really grateful to see him on the court and watch him play. I don't watch diminishment of skill as much as you guys do, maybe, or the fans do. I really do feel, and I felt that way watching Rafa, which we'll get to in a minute. And I felt that way watching Roger. I don't look for that, but it's true. I mean, he's getting older now and there's some wear and tear. It's absolutely true.
And there are people who've emerged that can demonstrate that to him. That's kind of part of the game too. Because in a vacuum, in a vacuum, it doesn't matter, even against certain opponents, even certainly against Rune, pretty much against Musetti. I thought Rune was more convinced, it was more comprehensive than the Musetti match. Because of Musetti's style, there's some moments where things were kind of potentially something, and yet
Agreed.
Just some moments for Musetti, but again, not to win the match, but to threaten in the match because of the matchup those two have. But the Alcaraz thing, it was a whole other level of opponent and occasion. The fact that Alcaraz had been in the final the year before and won it, that played a factor for both of them, I'm sure.
Yeah, it almost felt like, given all the circumstances, that despite the fact that Alcaraz was the defending champion, I thought there was almost a little bit more pressure on Novak. It felt like he was the one with a little bit more to prove, which was
really,
I think, a little bit of a reversal. I thought so. I thought there was more pressure on Novak because it would signal the turnaround of his season. Whereas if Alcaraz had lost, I don't think, I think he could have looked at it as more of, I won last year, I lost this year, I just won Roland Garros, it's all gravy, it's all good in the hood. Where I thought for Djokovic, there was more like, all right, let's not lose 2 years in a row here in the final to Alcaraz, and let's show that we still have it here in 2024.
Well, that's the right message. It's funny about the pressure balloon baton. I thought it's a privilege. Oh, it's good. Embrace pressure. No, he has more pressure. No, pressure's not on me. The pressure's on him. This whole thing about pressure is kind of funny. It's almost, it's funny how it gets batted around like, oh no pressure on me. I got nothing to lose.
Yeah, but I think all the time it plays out in a way that's pretty meaningful, right? Like when Taylor Fritz played Lorenzo Musetti in the quarterfinals, Fritz was supposed to win, and Musetti was happy to be there. And that gives Musetti an advantage.
Well, that gets you right. That gets to the way of pressure and attitudes. It absolutely gave Musetti an advantage. I covered that match. I was right there on the court for that and pretty much watched it start to finish. And you're right. And Musetti and Taylor had the favorite thing. Oh, these things are illusions, but that doesn't mean they're not true. It means they play out in the hearts and minds of the players. I mean, I thought even after Taylor Fritz, he wins the first set pretty easily of that one. Next two, he loses, wins the fourth set. Oh yeah, he's on his way. He's going to win. And then he gets rolled in the fifth. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, let me be clear. You're right, Amy, about what I'm alluding to. I'm alluding to the fact that Djokovic has, shown a lot of downward trends this year that should be actually taken seriously, despite all of the circumstances around them. What I'm not saying is that there's no hope for him to have a massive resurgence, for him to win another major again, for things to fall into place where he's moving better and he's playing better and things happen for him. So I still completely am open to the possibility that happens. I just think the way I suppose I don't think it's fair to Alcaraz, and I also don't think it's proper analysis to say, okay, we're going to completely pretend that this final doesn't count because Djokovic had knee surgery a month ago, which I saw a little bit of, to
No
be
one would
honest.
say. I don't think no one would say that. I don't think anyone who does.
I saw a lot of let's take nothing from this result. Let's
Wait.
not analyze it at all.
From Twitter, from fans who watch the game on Twitter, or from people who are covering the tournament?
No media, just fans.
Yeah, that's great. That's thoughtful. I'll probably get flagged for that. But
look, no, it's okay. And I also understand why fans would say that. Like, just write it off. Knee surgery, write it off. I'm just saying I think it's a little bit it's looking at it through Novak colored glass goggles. And I think if you
Novak didn't. He wouldn't.
You're right. Well, Novak, wouldn't you say, generally is very, very diligent about not making excuses.
Yes,
even when very diligent about that.
He's excellent. He's exemplary.
One of the best.
He
Yeah.
gives
Absolutely.
credit to the opponents, and he's gracious. I mean, I'm very impressed with how Novak conducts himself when he loses. I mean, he is really good. I've been in a number of press conferences with him after losses, and he handles that really, really well.
I mean, what I took away from this Wimbledon run is if somebody had told you that Novak was going to make the final after the knee surgery, would you be happy? Like, would you be surprised? Would you go, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So that's kind of what I took away from that. I think he is a figure in sports that trailblazes, and he's showing us what is possible in terms of healing. Lots of people on planet Earth have knee surgeries, and it actually is very inspiring to think that, well, if I do this and I do that, I can come back from this, I can heal. So I will think of this whole thing as a great run that was very inspirational.
I agree. I mean, I didn't think he was going to play. Now, granted, I guess I need to learn more about what this surgery was compared to other surgeries people have. Nonetheless, it was knee surgery, and that he had it, and I didn't think he was even going to play Wimbledon. I mean, I was surprised when I heard he was practicing. I thought, wow, and there he is, and he's practicing, and he's entered, and he's going to play, and he plays excellent tennis throughout the fortnight. No matter who he's playing great. I watched him practice a number of times. It's very inspiring to watch him
And
play.
not just the knee recovery. I thought the run of the final was an amazing display of skill because I mean, clearly, and we saw this exposed, but clearly the movement wasn't really ever there. And we couldn't even see that when he was playing because he was that dominant offensively against his opponents. I mean, he was just in charge with his skills, his serve, his +1 balls, his volleying.
Yep.
I mean, he just was all over all of his opponents where they couldn't even really get him. They couldn't even really take advantage of the fact that he wasn't going to be able to move into the corners over and over again explosively, which is quite remarkable in itself.
Yeah, no, it was. I thought it was extremely impressive. I mean, I think it would have been an incredible story for him to have won it after having surgery. But to get to the finals, I mean, that's just after a lot of people, myself included, thought he wasn't even going to play the tournament. It's tremendous.
Okay, one Alcaraz thing. Then I want to talk Nadal and Olympics and Djokovic when it comes to Olympics. It won't be like a full preview because we have time to do that later. But how much of an Alcaraz problem is there for everybody? I mean, it's not just a Novak problem. Everybody, he's now the youngest player to win the Channel Double, and he's got 4. And before Roland Garros, Sinner was clearly about to take over #1 and was displaying a lot more consistency. And Alcaraz had 2 slams, and Sinner had 1. And yes, there was an age difference, But now suddenly, oh my God, I hate to do the slam count already. They're way too young for this. But now suddenly, oh my God, it's 4-1. Alcaraz is 4. And I just think if you give Carlos the mental freedom and he's not, and he just unlocks kind of his mind, it's so dangerous for everybody because the ability is just top line.
He's tremendous. I mean, he has so many skills and so many shots, and he also has the X factor of so loving to play. I just remember last year before the final when he said, "This is going to be the best day of my life." Before the final, he said that. So he was just ready to play, and he knows that it's a game. He's there to play tennis, not work tennis. And I think, yeah, first of all, it's an opportunity for everybody who watches tennis to take in this guy because I think he's a generational talent, right? He's one of these people. He's all in the way that Nadal and Federer and Novak emerged as kind of like tremendous, tremendous players. And yeah, that's right. They gotta figure him out. I mean, and people made their efforts. I mean, look, TFO extended him to 5 sets. Tommy Paul won the first set and was up a break in the second. So he's not unbeatable. It's just they gotta keep he's setting the standard.
You know, when I saw that Nadal is going to play Cam Norrie next, I was just curious about Cam Norrie, and I went down a little mini rabbit hole, and I came upon an article where Cam Norrie was asked, excuse me, in an interview, who do you think is better, Alcaraz or Sinner? And Norrie was like very frank about it. And he said, Alcaraz, and these are the reasons why. He's a better mover. He's better at the net. He listed 5 things, and he's like, no question about it. And I guess Cam has not even played Sinner officially, but you know, I'm sure maybe they've hit against each other or whatever. But that just goes to show that's just a player on tour ranked in the 40s, his impressions of Alcaraz and how he stacks up.
Well, Alcaraz actually, it's so funny. I remember this, and I'll tell you why I remember this. Alcaraz beat Cam Norrie before he beat Tsitsipas at the 2021 US Open. It was the match before. And I remember that because I know Cam's coach, and I was walking on the grounds of the US Open, and I saw him, and I was about to say hi, and then I realized that he looked upset. And then I realized it was after the match, and Norrie had just lost, so I didn't say hi. I left him the space. Norrie was the favorite in that match. Norrie was having the best year of his career. He just had the run at Wimbledon, and this kid Carlos Alcaraz just beat him in straights. So that's Norrie's experience with Carlos. And then they've played since, but I imagine that was a situation where Norrie was like, "Oh my God, who the heck is this?" And what just happened.
And my observation, my anecdotal observation, non-scientific but empiric, of interviewing players of all generations, it's kinesthetic. In other words, they don't look at it analytically like, well, look how Sinner matches up versus these people. Look how it's now for me, you know, the experience they had playing that guy. So they're not looking at the breadth of the matches. And I think the commentary cycle is so loud when it happens. And remember a few months ago when Carlos had an injury and Sinner was blossoming and playing great. And I think he's still great. I mean, so there's a sense on Carlos, does he go for it too much? Does he try for too many shots? Is he injury prone? Is he all this? And now it's just like, okay, Paris, London, checkmate, double.
Yeah.
Right? Not so much to Sinner as much as to doubting, you know, and I said this, I was on Radio Wimbledon during the tournament, and something came up about Alcaraz and his style. I said, it's not reckless when you own it. You know, basketball, Steph Curry's shooting from 35 feet. He's not going for it. He's shooting the shot he's practiced to hit. And Alcaraz is tremendous testimony to what player development really is. How we build a style, how a player broadens the line of attack as much as possible. And so maybe when he's 12 years old, he's playing serve volley points for 30 minutes or hitting drop shots or just doing things that are building the arsenal. And that's what's giving audiences so much pleasure watching him play.
Yeah, well, he said when he was young, and I think now he's tried to be really diplomatic about it, but he said he tried to play like Federer. So everything he saw Roger do, he wanted to play like that. He wanted to come forward and attack.
And Roger does everything. He wanted to have spins, and he wanted to create. So we got a guy who's got the vision of how to play like Federer, some of the competitive dig in qualities of Novak and Rafa. I mean, okay.
Yeah. And he's Spanish like Rafa.
Yeah,
And
with
his
an
own
open
joy.
with an open stance two-hander.
Yeah, and his own joy at playing. That those three had their joy, but they were with each other. So there's a whole special X factor that he brings that's his alone. So
Last
yeah,
Novak question.
yeah.
Does the Wimbledon experience help his chances in Paris?
Yeah, I think so, because I think you answer that by saying, what if he hadn't played Wimbledon? Where would he be? I think he's just a little more match tested, and anytime you can play against the best in the world, then, it's going to help you closer to the time that you need to peak.
I agree. I mean, it's the fact that he kind of like turned the table upside down by playing Wimbledon instead of not playing Wimbledon, rest, rehab, maybe play a tournament, a small tournament, maybe not, come to the Olympics, what's going on. And now he knows, hey, just got to the finals of Wimbledon. Okay, I'm coming back to Paris where I've won the title 3 times. Who's the factor?
Yes, sorry, Joel. If he can feel in training in the next 2 weeks that he's improved his movement by 15%, and by the way, that might feel like a small percentage. It's not. This stuff is all along the margins. But if he can feel like he's 15% quicker, then he should be saying in his mind, I just made the Wimbledon final. Now I'm 15% quicker. Now we're in business. So, I think it also helps him, or doesn't have any effect, but it definitely doesn't hurt. I mean, I don't think that he's got 2 weeks now to analyze and obviously recover with the body, and then to, get the clay shoes back under him, so to speak. And yeah, I thought he probably learned a lot about himself and his game through playing the final with Alcaraz and also going through to the final.
I think the real how do you put it? The impact from the summer is going to be felt at the U.S. Open when someone reaches the U.S. Open semis who's never been that far before, because these bodies, Novak, Alcaraz, let's say Rafa, depending on how much he plays, they're going to be pretty worn by the time the Olympics is over, emotionally, physically. So how they're going to, I mean, yeah, I'm a little nervous if I'm this tournament director of a summer tournament in North America, and how they're going to surface at the U.S. Open and where their bodies are going to be. Yeah, they'll have played.
I agree.
Well, Novak will have played 2 major clay events at Roland Garros and Wimbledon this summer, coming into the U.S. Open.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, Canada is going to be probably somewhat thin, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one I would skip.
Well,
Sorry. I guest on those guys' podcasts all the time, and they are so awesome. But maybe a chance for some of the Canadian players to break out.
Well, some of the other ones who wanna who like, for example, I'll tell you who I think, if I look at the summer, because he's not playing the Olympics, I want to keep my eyes on Ben Shelton, who had a nice run at Wimbledon to the 16s and not playing the Olympics. And then Taylor Fritz, will see if he goes to the Olympics. If he does, I mean, yeah, some of the Americans, Tommy Paul, how they go.
I'll give one. The only guy who took a vacation after Wimbledon. I mean, sorry, the only guy who took a vacation after Roland Garros. Casper Ruud. Casper Ruud. Is it going to pay off with the big U.S. Open run? He'll be rested. Everyone else hasn't had a vacay in 8 months, and he's coming off of it. So Nadal is in Bostad, Sweden. It is not Bastad, if anybody pronounces it like that.
It's
that is
Gstaad.
Well,
Switzerland.
Exactly. But a lot of people say, oh, it's Gstaad and Bastad. And it's like, no, it's actually Bostad, which is not how I wouldn't think it is pronounced that way. But it actually is. So FYI.
But FYI, we've been saying Alcaraz wrong as well.
No. It depends what part of.
That's a joke.
I know.
That's a joke.
It's a joke, but some people think it's true. Some people think that if you're
Well,
not saying
all of London and Wimbledon, they all said Alcaraz. So
because BBC decided to say it that. I mean, I don't think they were
BBC
saying it
said
like that
Alcaraz.
last year.
They were saying Alcaraz.
except McEnroe, he wasn't saying it that
Yeah,
way.
They were saying Alcaraz.
Yeah.
They were saying Alcaraz actually.
On all the on-court interviews and yeah.
I didn't know that, Am. Wow.
Yeah, I would love to know exactly what changed. Was it just because that's how Carlos says his name on the ATP and they just decided to change it? But the thing about that is even in some parts of Spain, they say Alcaraz. And then in other parts of Spain, they say Alcaraz.
I don't
So
want to take you into meetings I've been in that revolve around pronunciations.
yeah,
We're going to spare the audience such process now and go on to speak about uh, Carlos and his possibilities and other themes. So, yeah.
yeah, both ways are okay. Is I think the truth. Um, anyway, Nadal playing doubles with Casper Ruud in Bostad, and also won a singles match against. Here's a headline, Joel, you never thought you'd see: Nadal defeats Borg in Sweden.
You know, the clay, no, the kings of clay, the kings of clay, Lee Smith, son of Leo Borg. Yeah, that was, I know, because there's often conjecture, these are the two greatest players in clay. What if they met? So it was his son. So yeah.
Yeah, Nadal 97% win percentage in his career at Roland Garros, and Borg 96% win percentage at Roland Garros.
Borg only won it 6 times though. He won it half as often as Rafa. Only 6 wins there. Darn.
He played half as many.
That's right. Yeah, he only lost. Yeah, that's right. So he lost twice. So
Yeah. Amy,
It reminds me of my Borg story when I went to Sweden for a wedding, and
Mhm.
my husband and I joked, oh, we'll probably run into Bjorn Borg. We get to the airport, and who do we run into?
no.
So we introduced ourselves, and big fan, all that. Okay, thank you, bye. So then we go out into Stockholm, and we're walking around, and we run into him again, and there's a photography crew taking pictures of him, and they asked me if I would sit next to him on a bench and pose for some pictures with Bjorn Borg. This really happened twice. I ran into the guy in one day, but anyway, so I did it. It was fun.
Where are the pictures?
Oh, this was back in the 90s. So, yes, I have the picture somewhere, but I'll dig it up.
I want to see that. Okay.
That
But
is,
but I have a very specific I know you called the match on Tennis Channel, and there was a problem with the world feed. It went out so almost nobody saw it in the second set, but I watched it up until that point. And this was my take on it, Gill, and then you can tell me your take. I thought that if Rafa had been playing full on extreme defense, this, stretch out wide kind of thing, he could have crushed Leo. But the way that he played, I thought Rafa was working on hitting run around forehand within the court, and minor adjustment steps on the footwork and hitting more forehands. But when Leo crushed one, say he crushed a down the line forehand, Rafa let him have it. That was my take on how the match was played. So the score was not, it didn't show him up. You know what I mean?
yeah. So I think Rafa knew that Leo wasn't consistent enough to really be dangerous. So I also saw just a little bit of I saw a little bit of passivity from Rafa while applying pressure. So not playing defensively, but also not exactly looking to finish with a lot of ferociousness all the time. So you're right, a lot of moving the forehand around the court and just saying, especially he loved his forehand in a Borg's backhand, and Borg struggled with that because he has a little bit of a stiff kind of flat backhand. So, I didn't really take much from the match other than I think Nadal served better than I've seen him
Yes.
serve. since maybe Brisbane. I mean, maybe he served pretty well in Brisbane, but I hadn't seen Rafa serve that well all clay season since coming back from the abdominal injury.
It reminded me of the Brisbane match, actually. I thought, wow, everything's going fine with him, you know? Serve looks good. But I did, when Rafa went through this rough stretch this year, I noticed that he wasn't hitting that runaround forehand that he likes to hit so far over, where you and I would never, if we were left-handers, we would never think of hitting a forehand from that zone of the court. He has always had that ability to take that. And he was doing it. He was doing it. Like you said, Gill, maybe not for the put away, but the footwork within the court looked good.
So he's also playing doubles with Ruud, and this is preparation for doubles with Alcaraz at the Olympics with Joel. I mean, look, I'm excited to see what Novak brings because it means a lot to him, and I'm excited to obviously watch Djokovic play singles, but I am just as excited to watch Nadal play doubles with Alcaraz. I think this is going to be a huge draw at the Paris Games.
Oh, that's going to be tremendous. It doesn't even matter who they play. I mean, just to see them pairing up and the energy. Nadal, he's previously won Olympic gold. He won with Mark Lopez in 2016. Now he's playing with the ostensibly the #1 player in the world right now. I mean, the rankings don't show it, but Alcaraz is #1 in the world right now. And that's going to be exciting to see the energy and the passion and the Olympic setting. Oh, that's going to be, I can't wait to see that.
I think they have a pretty good chance to medal. Honestly, I think I think Nadal is an incredible doubles player.
Yes.
Alcaraz is an inexperienced doubles player, but I just think he's going to figure it out because the skills are there. And with Rafa, like the concern in terms of what he's lost is it's all about his movement. Like it's all about his legs. And as we can see, just look at the doubles tour and half the players are hovering around 40 years old. This game isn't about movement. I'm sorry. I said it.
Oh, it's doubles. No question.
Oh, it reminds me, I played doubles this morning and we just don't move. You know, you come home from playing doubles and you feel like you still need to work out, you know. It's true. It's true.
Well, we'll have a full-blown Olympic preview sometime prior to the Paris Games, no doubt. But until then, let's see what Nadal brings in Bostad, and Djokovic will probably look to rest up, and I don't think we'll see him in a competitive match until Paris. So it's going to be interesting to follow. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. Remember to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.